This case reveals what might be the most prolific serial killer in Thailand's history. Even more disturbing is the elaborate scheme that allowed the killer to continue preying on grieving families for years. Over the course of more than 8 years, the killer executed a series of murders by poisoning their victims, making their deaths appear as natural heart failures. This ensured that the families of the victims would not suspect foul play. The motive? Financial gain, either by inheriting properties from the victims or profiting from their deaths. The killer approached victims under the guise of helping them settle debts or pursue lucrative financial opportunities. One case begins at around 10 or 11 in the morning when a woman walked down to a riverbank to release fish as part of a popular merit-making tradition known as ploy plot. Suddenly, the woman collapsed. Bystanders gathered to help, and emergency services were called. Tragically, she passed away before paramedics could revive her. The medical team suspected cardiac and pulmonary failure as the cause of death. The victim was identified as Miss Sian Kang, also known as Koi, a 32-year-old successful businesswoman from Kanchanaburi province. However, her parents suspected foul play as Koi had no known health issues. To make matters more suspicious, several of her belongings, including cash, 2 phones, an iPhone 14 Pro Max and an Oppo, her purse, and her car were missing. At her parents' insistence, authorities revealed the CCTV footage, revealing that Koi had arrived at the river with a friend, M. Sarat, also known as M. The footage showed the 2 women initially walking together, but later parting ways. M exhibited strange behavior, pacing, asking questions, and appearing lost before retrieving an item from the car. Moments later, she descended the stairs toward the river where Koi had collapsed, but quickly returned to the car and drove off without assisting her friend. Koi's car was later recovered at the residence of one of Am's acquaintances. CCTV footage revealed that Koi had driven the car to Am's house before the 2 headed to the river together. Am initially denied being at the river that day, but admitted to it when confronted with the evidence. She claimed she left because she had urgent matters to attend to and assumed Koi would be fine with others assisting her. Subsequent investigations revealed that Am had mailed some of Koi's belongings, including her purse and Oppo phone, to a friend. This suspicious behavior, coupled with evidence of financial manipulation, raised serious questions about Am's role in Koi's death. As authorities dug deeper, a chilling pattern emerged. Reports surfaced from people claiming that their friends or family members had died under similar circumstances after meeting Am. Many victims were found with darkened nails, a potential sign of cyanide poisoning. Over 3 years, from 2020 to 2023, at least 15 such cases were identified. Am was arrested on April 23, 2023. As news spread, more victims and patterns of suspicious deaths connected to Am came to light. In one case, a woman who had loaned Am money reported experiencing chest tightness and numbness in her hands after consuming a pill Am had offered. Fortunately, she was taken to a hospital and survived. Am's background also raised eyebrows. At the time of her arrest, she was a 36-year-old mother of 2, previously married to a police officer. Despite divorcing in 2020, they maintained contact, possibly for their children's sake. Among Am's suspected victims was her boyfriend, who died a month before Koi under similarly attributed to cardiopulmonary failure, but further investigations revealed inconsistencies. Evidence of cyanide, a highly toxic compound often used in industrial processes, was found linked to Am. Large quantities of the substance were discovered in locations tied to her, including her ex-husband's house and her mother's home. Investigators believe Am used cyanide to poison her victims, disguising the murders as natural deaths. Her victims included friends, acquaintances, and even police officers. Am employed various financial schemes to target vulnerable individuals, from fraudulent savings associations to life insurance scams. She preyed on desperation, ensuring her victims wouldn't live to benefit from the arrangements she offered. Am's case has shocked Thailand. With over 15 suspected victims, she may be one of the country's most prolific serial killers. Authorities believe her crimes began as early as 2015, escalating over the years. Despite overwhelming evidence, Am denied any wrongdoing and made outlandish claims, such as suggesting her victims requested cyanide or blaming her now-deceased boyfriend for supplying it. The investigation revealed a trail of financial exploitation, manipulation, and murder. Am's calculated actions devastated families, leaving them grieving and financially ruined. As authorities built their case, Am remained defiant, but the weight of the evidence against her painted a grim picture. If found guilty, Am could face the death penalty, marking her as one of the most heinous criminals in Thailand's history. The case serves as a grim reminder of how trust can be exploited and the importance of vigilance in personal and financial dealings. The scope of Am's criminal activities was staggering. Authorities discovered that she exploited a traditional financial practice called ROSA, Rotating Savings and Credit Association. ROSA is a group savings system popular in Southeast Asia, where members contribute a fixed amount of money regularly, with the pooled funds distributed to one member in rotation. This system relies heavily on trust and is often used to save for significant expenses or emergencies. Am weaponized this trust, using ROSA to identify potential victims who had disposable income. Once she determined someone had financial resources, she lured them into her web of schemes. In one chilling example, a victim named Miss Naya pawned her Civic for 1,500 baht, around $4,300 USD, on Am's advice. That same evening, after having drinks together, Naya was found dead, her face darkened, a common sign of cyanide poisoning. The death was initially attributed to circulatory and respiratory failure, and Naya's family did not suspect foul play. However, investigators later uncovered that Am had orchestrated the transaction, keeping the money for herself. This pattern repeated with other victims. Am targeted individuals who were financially strained, offering them promises of profit or relief through investments, loans, or other fraudulent schemes. She often manipulated them into pawning vehicles or valuables, which she would then claim after their deaths. In some cases, victims' families could not afford the costs to reclaim these items, allowing Am to keep the assets and profit further. Am's methods were as diverse as they were sinister. She frequently invited victims to religious ceremonies, temples, or fortune-telling sessions, offering them food or drinks laced with cyanide. During the COVID-19 pandemic, she allegedly provided victims with medication or diet pills containing the poison, exploiting their trust to carry out her murders. The investigation revealed a deeply disturbing detail, and even targeted police officers, likely through her ex-husband's connections. If law enforcement officers weren't safe from her schemes, it highlighted just how calculated and daring she was. Am's reach extended to high school friends and acquaintances, showing that anyone connected to her was a potential target. Among her most audacious crimes was her use of life insurance policies. Am encouraged her victims to take out policies naming her as the beneficiary under the guise of collateral for loans. When they inevitably passed away, supposedly of natural causes, she collected the payouts. The poisonings, disguised as heart failure, ensured that her crimes went undetected for years, unless specifically tested for cyanide. Investigators found that had amassed a staggering 78 million baht, approximately $2.03 million USD, across 180 bank accounts. However, it was revealed that she lost much of her fortune to gambling addiction. This reckless behavior, fueled by blood money, painted an even darker picture of her psyche. Police General Sir Achate, overseeing the case, described Am as a psychopath without conscience, emphasizing her complete lack of remorse or guilt. The forensic evidence against Am was damning. Cyanide was found in a car she shared with her ex-husband, and additional capsules were discovered at her mother's residence. While Am maintained her innocence, the sheer volume of evidence made her claims increasingly implausible. At one point, she absurdly alleged that Coy wanted to take cyanide voluntarily, portraying herself as merely fulfilling her friend's request. The investigation also uncovered the shocking ease with which cyanide could be obtained in Thailand. A shop in Bangkok had sold over 1,500 bottles of the substance, raising concerns about potential regulatory loopholes and the broader implications for public safety. This discovery left many wondering how many other poisoners could be operating undetected. Am's crimes devastated her victims' families, many of whom were left in financial ruin on top of their grief. Some were forced to sell assets or take out loans to cover funeral costs or reclaim pawned property. In an especially egregious move, Am hired a lawyer to demand additional payments from grieving families, further exploiting their distress. In the months following Am's arrest, social media was ablaze with public outrage. Many commenters expressed satisfaction when it was reported that she miscarried while in prison, though others condemned the sentiment. The sheer scale of her crimes, stretching back to at least 2015, left a lasting impact on countless families. Am's first known victim was a woman named Sai, who had entrusted Am with managing her properties while living abroad. When Sai returned to Thailand, Am picked her up from the airport and took her to her condo. The next day, Sai was found dead. Am sold Sai's property and pocketed the proceeds, marking the start of what would become a years-long spree of financial exploitation and murder. Research into female serial killers reveals that they often target people within their close circles, typically motivated by financial gain rather than the violence or dark desires that drive many male perpetrators. Am's case fits this pattern, but her body count places her among some of history's most notorious killers. This chilling case serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of blind trust. Am's story underscores the importance of vigilance, especially when financial dealings or personal safety are involved. The ease with which cyanide was procured and used in these murders highlights a glaring gap in oversight, raising urgent questions about public safety in Thailand and beyond. As the trial unfolds, one question remains: will Am face the death penalty, or will she spend the rest of her life behind bars? Either way, her case is a grim testament to the horrors of unchecked greed and the devastating consequences of betrayal. The full extent of Am's crimes has left both authorities and the public grappling with the enormity of her actions. Her ability to evade suspicion for years demonstrates her cunning and strategic manipulation of people and systems. From exploiting legal loopholes to leveraging personal relationships, Am constructed a web of deceit that shielded her from accountability. Until now. The legal consequences. Am's case has become a landmark in Thailand's legal and criminal history. If convicted, she could face the death penalty, a rare sentence in Thailand, but one that reflects the severity of her crimes. The last execution in Thailand occurred in 2018, highlighting how infrequently such sentences are carried out. However, given the overwhelming evidence and the public outcry, there is significant pressure for the judiciary to impose the maximum penalty. General Surachet, who has been vocal about the investigation, described Am as a danger to society. He emphasized that individuals like her, serial killers with no remorse, cannot coexist with others and must remain behind bars for life if not sentenced to death. While capital punishment remains a contentious issue, many in the public believe that Am's actions warrant the ultimate punishment. A psychological profile of a serial killer. Psychologists examining Am's case have characterized her as exhibiting psychopathic tendencies. This includes a lack of empathy, a manipulative nature, and a propensity for exploiting others for personal gain. Unlike many serial killers driven by violence or sadistic pleasure, Am's motives were purely financial. However, her method, using cyanide, demonstrated a cold, calculated detachment from her victim's suffering. Experts also highlight the unique dynamics of female serial killers. While less common than their male counterparts, female killers often operate within their social or familial circles, relying on trust to access their victims. Am's ability to exploit cultural and religious practices like Rosa or merit-making ceremonies speaks to her understanding of societal norms and her willingness to weaponize them. Impact on families and society. The ripple effects of Am's crimes extend far beyond her immediate victims. Many of the families she targeted lost not only loved ones, but also their financial stability. For instance, families burdened with reclaiming pawned assets often found themselves in debt, compounding their grief with financial distress. Am's actions have also eroded trust in traditional community practices like Rosa. What was once a system based on mutual support and trust is now viewed with suspicion, as people fear falling victim to similar schemes. The case has sparked broader conversations about financial literacy, the regulation of informal saving systems, and the need for safeguards to protect vulnerable individuals. The role of cyanide in modern crimes. One of the most alarming revelations from this case is the ease with which cyanide can be obtained in Thailand. Despite being a highly toxic substance, it was readily available for purchase in Bangkok and even online. This raises serious concerns about regulatory oversight and the potential for similar crimes in the future. Authorities are now reviewing policies surrounding the sale and distribution of cyanide to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. Cyanide, often used in industrial applications like mining and electroplating, is also found in some pesticides. Its odorless and tasteless nature makes it a particularly insidious weapon, as victims are often unaware they've been poisoned until it's too late. The forensic challenges of detecting cyanide in toxicology reports further complicate investigations, allowing perpetrators like Am to operate undetected for years. Broader implications for law enforcement. Am's connections to law enforcement through her ex-husband highlight the vulnerabilities within the system. Several of her victims were police officers or individuals introduced to her through her ex-husband's network. This raises questions about how her activities went unnoticed for so long, even as patterns began to emerge. The case has prompted a re-evaluation of internal procedures within Thai law enforcement. Authorities are now focused on improving the detection of patterns in suspicious deaths and ensuring that financial crimes tied to such cases are thoroughly investigated. Public confidence in law enforcement has been shaken, and efforts to rebuild trust are underway. Public reaction and media coverage. The public's response to Am's case has been overwhelmingly negative, with many expressing outrage at the sheer audacity and cruelty of her crimes. Social media platforms have been flooded with comments condemning her actions, with some users even criticizing her for attempting to use her pregnancy as a shield against harsher sentencing. Many felt a sense of grim satisfaction upon learning that Am miscarried while in custody, though others argued that such sentiments detracted from the focus on justice for her victims. The case has also drawn international attention, with media outlets around the world reporting on Thailand's Cyanide killer. Documentaries, news reports, and online discussions have kept the story in the spotlight, ensuring that Am's victims are not forgotten. Am's legacy as a serial killer. If convicted, Am will go down in history as one of Thailand's most notorious serial killers. Her crimes are a chilling reminder of how greed and a lack of empathy can drive someone to commit unthinkable acts. While financial motives are common in cases of female serial killers, the scale and sophistication of Am's schemes set her apart. The investigation into Am's actions is ongoing, with authorities continuing to uncover potential victims and piece together the full extent of her crimes. Her case has already led to significant changes in how such cases are investigated and prosecuted in Thailand, ensuring that future perpetrators will face greater scrutiny. A cautionary tale. Am's story serves as a grim cautionary tale about trust, greed, and the devastating consequences of unchecked ambition. It underscores the importance of vigilance in personal and financial dealings and the need for systemic changes to prevent similar tragedies. As the trial moves forward, the world will be watching closely. Will justice be served for Am's many victims? Only time will tell. For now, her story remains a haunting reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. The evolution of Am's criminal career. One of the most chilling aspects of Am's story is how her criminal tactics evolved over time. Beginning with smaller-scale frauds and manipulations, she gradually escalated to more elaborate schemes involving murder. Early in her criminal career, she relied on the trust of close friends and acquaintances to secure access to their finances and properties. Over time, her confidence grew, and she began targeting a wider network of victims, including strangers she met through financial associations, religious gatherings, or even dating apps. What sets Am apart from many other serial killers is the meticulous planning behind her crimes. Each step, from gaining her victims' trust to eliminating them, was calculated to maximize her financial gain. Her use of cyanide was particularly strategic. Its odorless and tasteless qualities allowed her to poison victims without immediate suspicion, and its rapid lethality often made deaths appear natural. This gradual escalation underscores the psychological profile of a highly manipulative and opportunistic individual, someone who thrived on exploiting others' vulnerabilities for personal gain. Systemic vulnerabilities exposed. Am's case has exposed several vulnerabilities in both society and systemic structures. Among the key issues are regulation of toxic substances. Cyanide's availability in Thailand has been a significant point of concern. Despite its lethal potential, it was sold freely in certain shops and online platforms. This case has prompted authorities to tighten regulations, increasing scrutiny on the sale and distribution of such substances. However, the fact that Am was able to purchase cyanide with ease highlights the broader issue of enforcement and oversight in chemical safety. Lack of financial protections. preyed on individuals who were financially vulnerable, exploiting informal savings systems like Rosa and using high-interest loans to trap victims in cycles of debt. This case has underscored the need for greater financial literacy and the regulation of informal financial practices to protect vulnerable communities from exploitation. Flaws in forensic investigations? Many of AM's victims were initially reported as dying from natural causes, such as cardiac or respiratory failure. The lack of routine toxicology testing in these cases allowed her to evade detection for years. Her crimes have prompted calls for improvements in forensic procedures, including mandatory testing for toxins like cyanide in unexplained deaths. Trust in law enforcement? Given AM's connections to the police through her ex-husband, questions have arisen about whether her actions were overlooked or facilitated by these relationships. While no direct evidence has implicated her ex-husband, the association has damaged public trust in law enforcement and highlighted the need for greater accountability within the system. A catalyst for change. In the wake of this case, Thailand has begun taking steps to address the issues it has brought to light. Some of the immediate actions include stricter controls on hazardous substances. Authorities have announced plans to regulate the sale and distribution of cyanide more stringently. Shops selling such chemicals are now required to maintain detailed records of buyers and their intended use of the substances. Improved forensic practices. The forensic community is pushing for mandatory toxicology testing in cases of sudden or unexplained deaths. This would not only help detect poisoning, but also deter potential perpetrators who rely on the assumption that such crimes will go unnoticed. Financial education campaigns. The government and nonprofit organizations have launched initiatives to promote financial literacy, particularly in rural and vulnerable communities. These campaigns aim to educate people about the risks of informal savings systems and high-interest loans. Reform in informal financial systems. Efforts are underway to introduce regulatory frameworks for informal financial practices like Rosa. While these systems are deeply rooted in cultural traditions, there is a growing recognition of the need for safeguards to prevent exploitation. Enhanced oversight of law enforcement. The case has prompted internal reviews within the police force to ensure that officers and their connections are not used to shield criminal activities. Public pressure has led to demands for more transparent investigations and accountability measures. The psychological toll on victims' families. Beyond the financial and systemic implications, AM's crimes have left a devastating emotional impact on the families of her victims. Many of these families were already struggling financially, and the loss of a breadwinner or loved one compounded their hardships. In some cases, families were burdened with additional debts as they attempted to reclaim pawned property or cover funeral costs. The psychological trauma of discovering the truth behind their loved ones' deaths has been immeasurable. Many families have expressed feelings of guilt for not recognizing the signs of foul play sooner, as well as anger toward a system that allowed AM to operate unchecked for so long. Support groups and counseling services have stepped in to provide assistance to affected families. These initiatives aim to help survivors cope with their grief and rebuild their lives in the wake of such unimaginable betrayal. Public perception and the media's role. M's story has captivated public attention both in Thailand and internationally. The media's coverage of her crimes has been extensive, with documentaries, news articles, and online discussions delving into every detail of the case. While this coverage has helped bring awareness to the systemic issues highlighted by her crimes, it has also raised ethical questions about sensationalizing tragedy. Social media platforms, in particular, have become a battleground of opinions. While many users have condemned Am's actions and called for justice, others have expressed concern about the potential for bias in her trial due to the overwhelming public outcry. Regardless, the intense scrutiny has ensured that her victims' stories are not forgotten. A legacy of lessons. Am's case will undoubtedly leave a lasting mark on Thailand's legal, social, and cultural landscape. It serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of blind trust and the devastating consequences of unchecked greed. As the trial progresses, it is hoped that the lessons learned from this tragedy will lead to meaningful change, preventing future cases like hers. The victims and their families deserve justice, not only through Am's conviction, but also through systemic reforms that address the vulnerabilities she exploited. While the scars left by her actions may never fully heal, they can serve as a powerful catalyst for a safer, more just society. Cultural reflections, trust and exploitation in Thai society. Am's crimes exploit deeply ingrained cultural values in Thai society, particularly the concepts of trust, community, and religious practices. Her manipulation of merit-making ceremonies, fortune-telling, and informal savings groups like Rosa reveals how societal norms can be weaponized by those with malicious intent. Merit-making and religious exploitation. Merit-making, a central practice in Thai Buddhism, was a frequent backdrop for Am's crimes. These ceremonies are deeply spiritual and are intended to bring good karma. By inviting victims to partake in such practices, Am capitalized on their spiritual trust and distracted them from suspecting foul play. This exploitation of religion has sparked a broader conversation about the misuse of spiritual practices for personal gain. The vulnerability of informal systems. Systems like Rosa thrive on interpersonal trust and community cooperation. Am's ability to manipulate this trust highlights the lack of oversight and safeguards within these informal structures. While Rosa offers financial accessibility to many who are excluded from formal banking systems, it also leaves participants vulnerable to exploitation when bad actors infiltrate these networks. A broader lesson in vigilance. Am's case serves as a wake-up call for individuals and communities to be more cautious about whom they trust, especially in financial dealings. While trust remains a cornerstone of Thai culture, this case underscores the importance of balancing trust with accountability. Comparative analysis, female serial killers in global contexts. Am's case provides an opportunity to examine the characteristics of female serial killers and how her actions align with global patterns. Motivation and methodology. Female serial killers are often driven by financial gain, as opposed to the violent or sadistic motives more commonly seen in male counterparts. Poisoning is a hallmark method, as it allows for a quiet, undetectable execution of crimes. Am's use of cyanide aligns with this pattern, demonstrating calculated precision and a preference for minimal confrontation. Exploitation of relationships. Female serial killers typically target those within their social or familial circles, leveraging trust to access their victims. Am's ability to identify and manipulate individuals within her network, from friends to acquaintances to financial associates, illustrates this trait. A legacy of female serial killers. Globally, cases like Am's remain rare but not unheard of. Figures such as Belle Gunness in the United States or Marianne Cotton in Victorian England share parallels in their financial motives and exploitation of trust. Am's case, however, is unique in its cultural and systemic context. which amplifies her ability to operate undetected for years. Judicial and ethical challenges. As the legal process unfolds, Am's case raises important ethical and judicial questions. Death penalty debate. Am's potential sentencing to death has reignited discussions about the morality and efficacy of capital punishment in Thailand. Supporters argue that her actions warrant the ultimate punishment, given the calculated nature and high body count of her crimes. Opponents, however, question whether the death penalty is an effective deterrent and whether life imprisonment might be a more just outcome. Fair trial amid media frenzy. The extensive media coverage and public outrage surrounding Am's case could pose challenges to ensuring a fair trial. Prejudgment by the public and media may influence the judicial process, prompting calls for caution in maintaining objectivity. Accountability for accomplices. While Am's direct involvement is clear, questions remain about whether others, such as her ex-husband, lawyer, or associates, were complicit or simply negligent. The dismissal of charges against her ex-husband and lawyer has left some wondering whether further investigation is needed. Lessons for law enforcement and public safety. Am's case has exposed weaknesses in Thailand's law enforcement and regulatory frameworks, prompting calls for significant reforms. Early detection of patterns. The delayed connection between Am's victims highlights the need for improved tracking of suspicious deaths. Law enforcement agencies are now exploring systems to flag patterns, such as multiple deaths linked to a single individual or financial beneficiary. Forensic advancements. The reliance on forensic evidence, particularly in toxicology, has proven crucial in Am's case. Authorities are now pushing for more routine post-mortem examinations, especially in cases of sudden or unexplained deaths. Public awareness campaigns. To prevent similar crimes, public education campaigns are being launched to raise awareness about the dangers of trusting individuals with significant financial control or accepting food and drinks from questionable sources. The human cost, stories of the victims. Behind the shocking headlines and sensational details of Am's case are the deeply personal stories of her victims and their families. Each life lost represents a unique tragedy, with ripple effects that extend far beyond the immediate crime. Families have spoken of their grief, financial struggles, and feelings of betrayal, as many considered Am a friend or trusted confidant. For instance, Miss Coy, whose suspicious death initiated the investigation, was described by her family as a kind and ambitious young woman with no known enemies. Her loss left a void in her community and shattered her family's financial stability. Mr. Day, Anne's boyfriend, trusted her implicitly. His family, unaware of her true nature, supported her even after his death, believing she was carrying his child. The eventual revelation of her role in his death compounded their heartbreak. These stories serve as sobering reminders of the human cost of Am's actions, emphasizing the need for justice not just in the courtroom, but also in societal reforms that protect others from similar fates. Moving forward, ensuring justice and prevention. As Am's trial progresses, it is clear that the implications of her case will resonate for years to come. Authorities, legal experts, and community leaders are united in their determination to ensure justice for her victims and to learn from the systemic failures that allowed her to operate for so long. Key measures being considered include stricter chemical regulations to prevent the misuse of hazardous substances, mandatory financial oversight for informal savings groups to safeguard participants, enhanced forensic protocols to detect and investigate suspicious deaths more effectively, strengthened public trust in law enforcement through transparency and accountability. Ultimately, while Am's crimes represent an extreme case, they highlight vulnerabilities that could be exploited by others. By addressing these weaknesses, Thai society can honor the memory of her victims and work toward a safer, more equitable future.